Moise, I heard you got an apartment for renting. How did that go?
So it's pretty good. Right now it's in the process. So I still haven't really gotten the whole apartment yet, but I've booked it.
Hmm.
And but I can walk you through the process of actually going through the process of buying an apartment. And yeah, it's I bought an apartment in Berlin,
Hmm.
in Germany, and right now, as you might have known, that the rates or the inflation is like soaring at this point.
Hmm.
So for me, it was really good to get a good deal from one of the banks. But I think there are a few things that if you're looking to buy an apartment there, you can actually go and basically, I would say, focus on some things which are like your financial state things, or you can look at the locality of the place. But yeah, it's overall, I think, pretty happy to have it. And yeah, like you said, like I wanted to buy something to rent it out in the near
Hmm.
future. And the goal is that the rent will cover the mortgage. But what I've heard also uh, in, let's say, from other experts is like it's also good that if you're actually paying a few hundred euros from your own pocket, because it could eventually come back to you via tax returns. When you do file your tax returns, you might get that money back. But since I'm already like, let's say, I still haven't filed my taxes for this year, I cannot say exactly how much is the tax return, but I think this is something that we can talk about when that process will happen.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds good. So, walk me through the numbers. So you said that you got a good interest rate. How much was the interest rate? How much was
Yeah,
the down payment? What's the price of the property? If you are comfortable talking about it, walk
yeah,
me through the
sure, of
numbers.
course. So the apartment is in Lichtenberg, and it's a 66 square meter apartment, and the
Hmm.
cost of it was 395,000. Now it is expensive, but it's also a new building, or a Neubau.
Hmm.
And with a Neubau, I think the rates are just getting super expensive in Berlin, especially. But if you compare it with the market in Munich or even in some other Western cities of Germany, Berlin is still hasn't still caught up yet. So it's still very good price to buy an apartment here.
Hmm.
And what I was looking for is 100% loan to value.
Right.
And that's one of the good things that you can get in Germany, that banks are still willing to pay the whole amount. Obviously, you have to pay a higher interest in this case, but my strategy was that I will use the amount just to pay the taxes or pay for the notary, things like that. But other than that, I would I would leverage everything that I can get from a bank. So yeah, that was my strategy. Fortunately, even with the rising interest rates, I was able to get a good enough. I don't know, like I got a rate of 1.72%. I don't know if it's good or not,
Hmm.
but just after 2 months, like if I calculate the interest rates right now, in if I want to go in the market and actually buy a property, the banks are giving you an interest rate of 2.4 to 2.5%. So you can already see like a 8.8% rise within a very short period. Like we're just talking about a couple of months here.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was. I would say it's pretty. It's good. It's a good feeling. And by the way, when you get a loan in Germany, what happens is that you can get it for a fixed term period, and that is actually a good thing, because then at least you can calculate your earnings or calculate how much interest you will pay for a fixed period. And normally you can get a interest rate fixed period for 5 years or 10 years, 15, 25, and even 30 years. So depending on what your current needs are or what your use cases are, for example, if you're buying a property to live in, maybe you would want to secure the interest rate for a very low price or for a very low interest rate, but for a longer period, right? So you can pay, or you can go for like 25 years and to get an interest rate of, let's say, 1%. So with that, I think you have a lot of options to play with in the, let's say, real estate market in Berlin or Germany. And the banks are giving you like 100%. So yeah, so I think I covered your question, right? Like that, those
Yeah,
were the two
yeah,
things.
that sounds great. So I think you got a pretty good deal because you said you got 1.7 interest rate, which is like, and right now it's 2.4, as you said. So that's pretty amazing. You got a good deal. And you said that you got a full 100% loan to value, right? In which case that you only need to pay for the notary registration and everything. So
Exactly.
how much, so if I'm planning to buy a property here in Berlin, how much cash I should have in my pocket before I go
Yeah.
out hunting for an apartment?
Yeah, I think before even like calculating that value, I think, but it's actually an important question. Like, you should always try to have at least 10% of the value. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because even though in Germany, like you have different states, and in different states there are different rules. For example, the Grundsteuer or the land tax that you pay in Berlin or alone is 6%. But if you buy a property in, let's say, Bayern or Saxony, somewhere else, that percentage is a little bit lower. So what that means is that you are paying a little bit higher when you buy a property in Berlin or in Brandenburg area. But it is, but depending on like the value of the apartment in the Bayern area is like super high, right? Like,
Right.
so eventually I think it will end up costing you more or less the same thing, right? Like, let's say even if you're paying 5% value, 5% land tax in Bayern, and if you're paying
Mm-hmm.
6%, but if the price in getting an apartment in Munich is actually higher, then you will end up paying more in actually in actual value or in monetary value.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about Berlin, right? Like, so what happens is that you pay 6% to land taxes, and then you need to have around 1 to 2% more for notary and for the Grundschuld. So there are like in total you need to have 8%, but it's always good to have 10%
Mm-hmm.
because since I don't speak or my German isn't that good, I would have to hire a person to come with me and basically read the whole contract in English
Mm-hmm.
because that's also something that you have to pay for. So that's why
Right.
keeping around 10% is a good ballpark area.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the property that I got is also provision free. So that's also something that's really important because if you are buying from, let's say, a real estate agent, they might they might want 3.5% more. So depending on, let's say, if you buy it from a real estate agent who's and it's not a provision free property, then you have to have around 11 to 12% of the value of the apartment.
Hmm.
So yeah, basically that's the ballpark area. That's what can give you an idea. So what I do is, let's say that before even going to get a market search, I will try to target like, okay, what's my radius? What locations do I want to have, and what's my budget like?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if I wanted to just spend 30,000, so I will say, okay, 30,000 divide by 0.8%, and that will give you the value of the actual thing. So let me really just quickly calculate and see how much that would be. Because, like, let's ballpark and say we need 8% of the value. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
30,000 divided by 0.08. Yeah, so you can get a property of 375,000.
Right.
So that's the area that you can take a look at.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on your situation, right? Like if you have 50K and you want to spend 50K, do the exact same thing. 50K divided by 0.8%, 0.08%, and yeah, that's how we should calculate this value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think, and you said that you need to have a budget of 8 to 10%. So I can do the calculation of
Yeah,
like something divided by, if I have 50,000, I can just divide it by 0.1 in case like if I want to ballpark it at 10%,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then I can see what budget I can
yeah,
have in mind when looking for a property. And how does the numbers look like afterwards? So you got a loan for fixed term loan for 10 years, right?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you were saying that you are gonna cover the mortgage or the amount you're gonna pay to the bank using the rent. So
Mhm.
how does that work? How much are you planning to rent it out for? How much is gonna be the charges you have to pay per month? How does that work?
Right. Yeah. So let's say that I got the property for 395K, which I've already said before, right? Like so, and I got charged 1.72. That's the interest rate that the bank will charge me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do a really quick, and this is also something that I found out during the process, that the way the interest rate is calculated, it's a combination of the interest rate that the bank will have and then the principal amount that you need to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So the total amount will be the combination of both these things. And that's the repayment is called the Tilgungssatz or Tilgung, which is the repayment rate. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, what that means is that every year you're paying the bank the interest because obviously they gave you a huge amount of money and you're paying for that service. And the second part is you will also be getting some principal value in the property. So every year, let's say if the principal rate is set at 2%, then every year you're also paying 2% of the whole property. And that will basically be your, that will be, it's called the repayment, like in terms of that's actually your value now of the whole property. Does
Hmm.
that make sense? Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Right? Like, so let's say you buy a property for 395K,
Right.
and if we were to just give the interest of 1.72%, so that will be just 6,700 euros per year.
Right.
Now let's divide that by 12, so that turns out to be 559 euros per month.
Right.
So if I did not have to do any repayment or this is the amount that I would have to actually have to pay to the bank. But on top of that, the bank says like, okay, you need to also pay, let's say 2% repayment rate. So that rate is basically then going to be, 7,900 euros I will be paying. And that is actually the actual amount that I will pay to the bank. That will be subtracted from the 395K. And if
Right.
I divide that by 12, that turns out to be 658. So 658 plus 559 turns out to be 1,217 euros. And that is the amount that I will be paying every month to the bank.
Hmm.
Now, the next part is that, okay, I can potentially, because it's Berlin, it's a rising rental market, rents are going off the roof. I will try to maximize the rental value that I can get from it. And my hope would be that I can at least cover 90% of the value, which can be paid by this. So let's say if I can get a rental value of 1,000 euros per month, then I'm only going to be paying 200 euros or 217 euros from my pocket, plus obviously some other costs such as like maintenance costs as well. So in total, if I'm paying 300 euros for, let's say, the next 10 years, and at the end, or let's say till 30 years time, and if I actually end up getting a property, I think it's a really good deal, right? Like, because obviously the longer that you will pay, the smaller the interest rate will be and the higher the repayment rate would be. It's also called amortization. And basically what happens is that the longer you are paying your interest, you're also basically buying your property, right? Like, or you're paying for the property or the amount that you borrowed from the bank in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you buy it, the more percentage of the property you are having every month. So let's say after 10 years, you have 20% of the property paid already. Or then after another 10, you pay another 10%. So that's how the calculation is done basically.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, what happens is that you start paying more for you pay more for the repayment rate, and it just keeps on increasing it.
Right.
Yeah, I hope I was able to answer that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are like a couple of things that I need to go into. So first thing that you
All right.
explained is the repayment rate. So every month you need to pay in total of about 1,400, like a ballpark it, 1,400. And
Mm-hmm.
some value of it is going into your actual asset building. You're paying for the actual property. And some of it, which is like 559, that you're paying to the bank for the interest or loan that it paid to you. So 559 is just giving to bank, and then the rest is like something 600 euros is going to actual property value. So each month you're paying some amount to the bank, and some amount is actually going to build your asset, which is your apartment. That, and then you're thinking when you put it on rent, you're hopefully thinking that you're going to cover all this money with the person who you're renting it out to, and that's the hope. Like it depends how much the people how much is the rent of that area or things like that, right?
Exactly. So obviously that's the ultimate hope that there's a positive cash flow rather than that I'll have to pay something from my pocket. But the way the German taxes are done, it's also a good thing that you tell them that, hey, I'm actually paying or I'm paying from my pocket rather than I'm getting a cash flow in positive rate. Because that
Mm.
actually helps you to get more taxes in back in tax returns. I'm not an expert there, but definitely the more I know about it, or when I'll actually get my tax returns for this year, maybe next year when I do it, then I'll actually get to know more about it in detail, and then we can definitely talk about it,
Mm.
what it means.
Yeah, I think
But
that
so
would be
far, what I've
interesting.
heard is that it's actually a good thing that you're paying some things from your pocket, because then when you do the tax returns, you might get something back.
Mm. I think that's interesting. And then you also mentioned that you need to keep some cash out for the maintenance if something goes wrong in the apartment. Are there any kind of insurances or anything that you can have to
Hmm.
cover you whenever things broke?
Yeah. So on that topic, right, like on house maintenance. So what happens is that even if you're renting right now, there's two things which are going from your pocket, which is uh, the rent, obviously the cold rent, and then there's a warm rent. Like, and in that warm rent, there's a small portion that you're also paying for the maintenance as a renter as well.
Right.
So that's a good thing if you're an owner of an apartment, that you can offset 80% of the whole maintenance fee towards the renter. So as a landlord or as a apartment owner, I will only be paying 20% of the whole value. So let's say that the building committee has decided that, okay, we will be having, let's say, 200 euros, and for the every month that we'll pay, and they'll put it in like a bank or a pot, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that will be the money that's going to be put in every month by every landlord owner. And if there's any maintenance, that's where they're going to pick that money from.
Mm-hmm.
So the good thing is that as a landlord owner, I will only be putting 20% of that value, because I'm expecting that 80% will come from the rental contract or the
Mm-hmm.
person who's actually renting the apartment.
Right.
So that's also a good thing to think about as well. But your question was more on, okay, are there any services that you can hire, or are there any insurances? Yeah, definitely. There are these household insurances that you should always have, or liability insurances. So that, let's say that even if you're renting it out, your house gets trashed or burned or whatever, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
then and that's like you pay for those services minimal amount, like maybe 5 euros a month or something. It's not super high. But then if something happens like that, what you can do is like go to that insurance company, and they will actually reimburse depending on how much your whole deal was, right? Like, maybe you need to pay something, but not a lot. And similarly, there are property management companies as well, which take, let's say, around 50 to 150 euros per month, and they will do
Mhm.
the everything, right? Like they'll take care of the whole maintenance. They'll take care of if there's anything wrong in the apartment, and they'll also try to find a new rental contract for you if your renter is leaving or ending the contract. So I think, yeah, all in all, you're looking at, let's say, 1,200 euros for mortgage. Let's say another 200 for the maintenance and another 100. So 1,500 is something that I'm looking at, like ballparking this area. Obviously, I haven't gotten the apartment yet, so I don't know. But my hope would be that, let's say, 1,200 will be paid by the renter, and then the 300 I will cover from my cost.
Right. That the numbers sounds great. So one thing I would go back to is you mentioned that the property you got was a provision free, and then you also mentioned that if you get it from a real estate agent, then you have to pay to the agent as well. How do you find the properties? How did you like? I would go deep into what is provision free. Like, is it that you're directly contacting the builder owner or the building manufacturer,
Hmm.
the constructor, or how did you find the properties? How are you looking, searching?
Yeah, so like the best thing about the German market is like everything is online. I know that there are some like sweet uh, properties that don't even get to Scout or to these websites because there are inner deals and then they're already sold before they even come to the online store. However, there are a lot of properties that are being built, and there are a lot of properties that are being renovated, or even in when we talk about old buildings, like there's huge number of properties that are on the value or on the market. And yeah, for me, I was looking at my goal was that I will just get like a new building. So there's a website called neubau.de, and there they mention all the new projects that are going to be happening. And mostly I was spending a lot of time getting the information from there and then contacting myself. And roughly it took me 6 months to basically find out, okay, that this is the property that I'll be going for. It takes time. You'll need to go and visit a lot of properties as well. If you're buying like an old property, you'll need to physically go because you don't know what the condition of that one is, right? Like maybe there's a mold in one of the corners, and like that will take another 10,000 of your money to actually repair that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely visits are super important. But because I was going for a Neubau and it's not really there yet, I couldn't really visit that part. I did go to the place where the building is being constructed right now, but since it's not built yet, I cannot go in exactly into it. The other thing I would say is go for a project developer who is a little bit famous. So few people that come to mind are Bonava, Project Immobilien, and GNB. So those are companies which have a lot of who've built a lot of properties or projects in all over Germany. So you know that their services are reliable, and it's not going to be because like there's a situation because of COVID, the supply chain is completely disrupted right now. So prices are getting high as well. So all of these things can affect when you're getting into a new building because it might just rise the prices, right? So you need to be careful, and that's why I would say go with like these big developers because they make sure that and the experience that they have will make sure that yeah the property gets done in time. And the builder that I'm going with is Project Immobilien, and they already have a clause that if they're even like a day late uh, it, from the completion date that they've told me, they will start paying me per square meter some amount as well. So that gives you a good, let's say, reassurance, okay, that they really mean to complete that property in time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Um, how do you know about these companies? Because I have been in Berlin for about like 4 or 5 years, and I don't know all these construction companies. How did you came across it during your research, or did you talk to anyone, or what was the process?
Yeah, so it's few small things, right? Like I got my first rental apartment from GNB. I think it's called Grossenberger or something. Like I don't really know the actual thing, but but then I know that they're also building a property, another second building right now just across my apartment. And then when you go to their websites, you figure out, okay, that yes, they've not just done one or two projects. It's like a multitude of projects all over Germany that they've built. So, and then when you start going into, there are a lot of reviews that you can have. So you can say, okay, Project Immobilien reviews, and you can start finding out, okay, how good are they? Are there any delays in their projects? What are their services? What are the different things? So, and one important thing, because I don't speak or my German isn't that good, I was looking for an experience which will be in all in English, and Project Immobilien got me that. So I'm actually quite happy that I chose them because if even the contract was read out to me in English because there were two sections. There was a German section and an English section. Of course, it cost me more money, but like that's fine, right? Like I don't want to sign on anything where I don't know what I'm actually signing on, right? Like, so it's always good to understand the contract, understand the consequences, what happens exactly where. So yeah. And but I think it's mostly like your interests. Like if you are looking to buy an apartment, then you'll start looking into these things, and then yeah, internet is full of answers, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like it needs a lot of research, but in the end, you are set for about like 10 years when you have a good property in hand and you're getting a good cash flow. And that's the goal, right? So to get the passive income. So
Exactly.
I think we are at the
More on it on yeah. But yeah,
25 minutes
let's
mark.
just end.
So there is something. So you are going to the rental investing route, and I'm more into stock investment, and you are not into stock investment. So I would like to break it down. Like, is it viable to get into the stocks, or how the returns of stocks looks like, or how the returns of rental investment looks like? But we can break it down to in another video. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can end it here, I think.
Yeah, of course. Like happy to chat about like stocks as well, and like the returns they're getting you at this point, and like is that a viable cash flow or not? Like what are your, because I think those are two different strategies, right? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's talk about it in a different video. Definitely, I
Yeah.
think this could be a good point to end at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for all the information. It was really helpful. I might
All right.
get into the rental investing route as well. So thank you so much. Right.
Happy to help. All
Yeah.
right. Have a good one.
Cheers. Yeah, have a good one. Bye.
Bye. Cheers.